I still remember the sound of the power drill whirring in my hand on that Saturday afternoon, the day everything cracked open and exposed all the rot underneath. Up until that moment, if you had asked me how my life was going, I might have shrugged and said, "Not bad." Sure, Megan and I had our fair share of arguments in our 10-year marriage, but I never suspected anything this extreme. In my head, she was simply my wife, pregnant with our son, and we were preparing for his arrival. I was 38, she was 36. She had a teenage daughter, Skylar, whom I had been raising since she was 5. I convinced myself we were one big, semi-functional family. That afternoon, I was in the garage, knees on the hard concrete, half buried in planks and nails from the box containing Liam's crib. We had purchased one of those build-it-yourself sets. Well, I had purchased it, like I purchase most things in our life. And it had come with at least 500 little parts and instructions that might as well have been hieroglyphics. Because it was hot in there, I had the garage door cracked open about a foot, just enough to keep air flowing. Above me was the kitchen window, partially open to let the breeze in. I remember the smell of newly cut grass blowing in from somewhere down the street. Then, through the background noise of my own hammering and drilling, I heard Megan say my name from the kitchen. That alone wouldn't normally register as suspicious. We'd been married long enough that ordinary talk about me, complaints, jokes, was hardly cause for alarm. But there was an odd tone in her voice, and I found myself pausing the drill to hear more clearly. "I just don't love him," Megan announced. Her voice was shaky, but I could tell it wasn't with tears. It was some other emotion. "I never did. He's a paycheck with hands." Inside my head, the sentence reverberated like a gunshot in a closed room. A paycheck with hands. And the worst part wasn't just that Megan said it, it was that Bernice, her mother, responded with a calm, almost indifferent murmur of agreement. Like they'd discussed this many times before, like it was common knowledge. The cosmic punchline of the conversation was my stepdaughter, Skylar, jumping in to ask if she could spit in my food. I froze. The weight of the power drill nearly slipped from my sweaty palm. They wanted me to remain the clueless ATM, satisfied to pay for everything and let them do what they wanted. Worst of all, the baby, my baby, due in 3 weeks, was apparently part of some scheme to secure more money, more leverage, more everything. In their plan, once the baby was born, they'd get custody if I broke down or tried to leave. That was the gist of the conversation. I swallowed the lump in my throat, forced my trembling fingers back around the drill, and resumed building the crib. I didn't trust myself to walk in there. I was furious, but I also wanted more. More information, more context, more time to plan what I'd do next. It felt like betrayal, so deep it seared straight through my spine, leaving me numb and on fire at the same time. That was the beginning, though truly, if I'm being honest, the real beginning must have come long before. Now, looking back, I can see how I missed all the signs. The separate bank accounts Megan insisted upon. The nights she claimed to be working late only for me to find receipts for fancy dinners days later. Her mother's constant digs about how I needed to pick up more shifts or angle for a promotion. And Skylar, this kid I had once cradled in my arms when she was sick, had started giving me endless side-eye and disrespect. But I always made excuses. She was a teen, that's just how kids behave, and on and on. Still, to my own shame, I never saw how deep it ran until I caught their words spilling from the kitchen window. I played the dutiful husband longer than I should have. That same evening, when Megan came out to see how the crib was progressing, she gave me this plastic smile and asked if I'd eat a sandwich she'd made. My stomach lurched. I remembered Skylar talking about spitting in my food, so I politely declined, forced a smile, and locked myself in the bathroom to hyperventilate in private. My reflection in the mirror was sweaty, upset, eyes red with disbelief. I had never felt so humiliated. But humiliation can lead to a certain kind of clarity, and I used that clarity to start planning. This time, though, my planning wasn't about building a nursery or investing in the 529 plan for Skylar's future. No, I started planning my exit strategy, as well as how to confirm everything. The child's paternity, Megan's fidelity, or lack thereof, and exactly how I could corner them so they couldn't weaponize Liam against me once he was born. My first step was scheduling a consultation with a PI. At first, I wondered if I was overreacting, but the anger and heartbreak propelled me forward. I found a local private investigator named Torres, a quiet, middle-aged woman with a sharp gaze, who specialized in marital disputes and custody battles. It felt surreal to be handing over both money and details of my personal life to a complete stranger, but I was desperate for answers and leverage. Please, I told her, voice trembling, just find out what's really going on. If she's cheating, I want proof. And if the baby's not mine, if there's some reason to doubt that, I need to know. I can't go on like this. Torres almost smirked, not in cruelty, but in that weary, I've seen it all way. We'll find out, she said. Give me what you know. Addresses, phone numbers, her mother's routine, your stepdaughter's routine, whatever you have. A few days later, I was given a chance to get out of the house under some pretext and meet Torres in a diner on the other side of town. She slid a small folder across the booth. My heart hammering, I opened it to see grainy time-stamped photos. Megan meeting a man in a parking lot. At first, the pictures weren't too incriminating. They could have been hugging. But as the sequence continued, the images escalated, focusing on Megan's body angles. She was definitely engaged in an explicit act with that man. I clenched my jaw so hard I thought my teeth might shatter. She had her teenage daughter waiting at a nearby cafe, Torres added, an edge to her voice. Your wife spent at least 15 minutes out in that back area, near the dumpsters, with this John Doe? My guess is that it's not the first time. I forced myself to look again at the photos. Megan's head was lowered, her hand braced on this guy's belt, and the outline of what she was doing was graphic enough that my stomach lurched. A wave of nausea swept through me. Despite everything I'd overheard, part of me, maybe out of sheer stupidity, wanted to believe she was playing me for money, but at least carrying my child, that perhaps she wasn't physically unfaithful. I guess I was naive to think so. Torres tapped the folder. I'll keep recording. If you want video, I can get that too, but this is more than enough to prove infidelity. And the baby? I croaked. I need to know once he's born. If I'm not the father, you can do a DNA test as soon as possible, she said quietly. But I'll keep the camera rolling. You might get more context about who the father is in case it's that guy or someone else. I left the diner feeling a knot of hatred and adrenaline in my chest, so tight I could hardly breathe. Megan had her side fling, performing sordid acts in some filthy parking lot, while Skylar calmly sipped iced coffee in a cafe next door, apparently complicit because she never breathed a word to me. Then they'd both come home and flash me these innocent eyes, as though everything was fine. Now I understood. I was the paycheck, the father figure to fill in the gaps, the gullible stooge. I tried not to lose my mind that night. I came home, forced to smile at Megan, who was in the living room rubbing her nearly full-term belly, and asked about her day. She gave some bland answer about meeting a friend for lunch. When I pressed for details, she said the friend's name was Linda. I swallowed back the urge to confront her on the spot, not wanting to tip my hand before I had everything in place. Skylar sat in the corner, tapping on her phone. She gave me this once-over, a sneer twisting her mouth. I'm starving, she said coldly. You're picking up takeout tonight, right? Even though I was seething inside, I said, sure. Thai or burgers? She shrugged one shoulder, deliberately dismissive. Whatever's expensive. I just stared at her. Once, long ago, she was the kid who'd excitedly asked me to push her on the swings. Now she was practically mocking me, bragging about how she wanted me to spend more money. And the worst part was, I'd do it because I was stuck. The baby was coming, and I needed to organize my approach carefully if I wanted legal leverage. When Liam arrived, it was under a swirl of chaos. Megan went into labor nearly 3 weeks early. She woke me up at 3 a.m, in tears, saying her water broke. Of course, I drove her to the hospital. For all my hatred, I still cared about that child, my child, as far as I was concerned. And in the hospital, for those fleeting minutes, I almost forgot my anger. The swirl of doctors, the beep of monitors, my wife's ragged breathing. Then there he was, a squirming, crying little boy with a shock of dark hair. The nurse placed him in my arms, and I felt my chest tighten in a mix of awe, love, and a lingering thread of bitterness about all that had been going on behind my back. Megan's mother and Skylar appeared at the hospital within hours. They cooed over the baby while I pretty much stood guard. It might have looked like fatherly affection, but the truth was, I didn't want them hustling Liam away for their own manipulations. My cynicism disgusted me, but after what I'd seen, I had no illusions left. Bernice cornered me in the hallway while Megan dozed in her recovery room. She adjusted the collar of her sweater in that prim way older women do and said softly, "You'll take good care of your family now that the baby's here, right?" I tried not to laugh in her face. Of course, I'm only a paycheck with hands after all. She frowned, clearly caught by surprise that I dared to reference it so directly. For an instant, her facade of gentle grandmother cracked. She looked furious, then tried to hide it. That was just talk. Megan was emotional. We all say things we don't mean. Right, I said, not bothering to hide the sarcasm. Then I brushed past her to check on my newborn son. 2 weeks later, in the hush of a morning that found me exhausted from night feedings, I placed a phone call to a lab that handles discrete DNA testing. I walked around on eggshells waiting for Megan or Bernice or Skylar to overhear me. But they were out at the store, so they claimed. Either way, they weren't in the house. The lab said a test could be done quickly with either a cheek swab from me and the baby or some other method if Megan objected. But I knew Megan wouldn't find out. I had ways to gather what I needed. Sure enough, that afternoon, I took a quick sample from Liam in his sleep, sealed it in the kit, and sent it off by courier. My heart clenched at the idea of not being his father. Yes, I despised Megan for everything she'd done, but that baby had become my reason for staying afloat. If he wasn't mine, I wasn't sure how I'd react. Meanwhile, Torres kept collecting evidence. She captured more footage. Megan leaving the new house with the baby once, meeting the same man in a different location. This time they had an argument, and though the audio was poor, it seemed like she was pressuring him about money. He kept gesturing to his own phone as if telling her to back off. Then, in a shocking twist, one of Torres's videos also showed Megan's conversation with Skylar, in which they openly mocked me. Skylar, unbelievably, hammered home how I was basically an ATM for her college tuition, saying, "He's going to pay for everything, so who cares? He's such a loser." When they got home after that meeting, I pretended to be napping on the couch. They strolled past me with shopping bags, mother and daughter smirking about something. Probably me. A month crawled by. The stress wore me down physically. My appetite disappeared, and my nerves were frayed. One night, the baby was screaming, and Megan barked at me to deal with him. As I lifted Liam from his crib, my phone buzzed with an email from the DNA lab. My stomach flipped. Holding my son gently in one arm, I tapped open the email with the other. The results showed a 99.99% probability that I was Liam's biological father. That meant something in my chest loosened. I might have been furious at Megan. I might have felt used and betrayed, but at least Liam was mine. No matter what happened next, I had a permanent bond with this little boy. I would do anything to protect him. In the swirl of my exhaustion and frustration, I found ways to become almost sadistically calm. If Megan wanted to treat me like an enemy, then so be it. I decided to become the villain she needed me to be, because at least then I could direct the outcome. I'd let her see just enough of my anger to keep her on edge, but not enough for her to realize how much evidence I'd collected. I'd withhold that explosive confrontation for the perfect moment. Increasingly, though, I noticed that Megan's shifts in mood. After the baby was born, she'd swing from weepy apologies to unleashing a swirl of criticism. I didn't hold the baby correctly. I was too slow to warm his bottle. I was too controlling. Meanwhile, Bernice was stepping in constantly, trying to rearrange my finances, pressuring me to put more money into a joint savings that apparently only she and Megan could access. Skylar, for her part, just kept up the vile commentary whenever she thought I wasn't listening. But I was. I was always listening now, thanks to some discreet recorders I'd hidden around the house. And I caught everything. Skylar telling her friend on a phone call that I was a total scumbag, but that her mom needed my paycheck because we can't afford anything otherwise. The kid was 15, but she spoke about me like she was some jaded 40-year-old gangster. My hate for her was rising in me like bile, a shameful feeling because I'd once carried her on my shoulders to watch fireworks. Finally, about 8 weeks after Liam's birth, I decided to hire a second PI just to confirm every morsel of Megan's affair. Torres was good, but I wanted to double down. I also wanted more than still photos. My plan was to have a video or at least audio that left no doubt. And sure enough, about a week after I authorized additional surveillance, I got a text from the second investigator. She's meeting him again. Parking lot near the old hardware store. She has the baby with her in the car. My blood turned to ice. I hopped in my vehicle and headed that way, but the PI had told me to stay out of sight so they could record everything. I parked a couple blocks down, white-knuckling the steering wheel. A swirl of contradictory emotions battered me. Rage, betrayal, heartbreak. Part of me was thinking, I'm such a fool. And another part already rehearsed the confrontation I planned to have with Megan. By the time I got the all clear from the PI, Megan and her lover were gone. The reporter had captured a short video of them. My wife, disheveled, having closeness on the man in the front seat of his truck, while the baby dozed in his car seat. The daughter, Skylar, apparently wasn't there this time, though she'd been present during previous encounters. It was all so disgusting and cold. I didn't even want to watch the clip, but I forced myself. She was glancing around the parking lot as she leaned over the console. The baby's distant cries could be heard, and the man kept pushing her away, like he was irritated by Liam's noise. Megan persisted anyway, like she was chasing his approval. Watching it, I felt a wave of sickness that almost turned me inside out. Things escalated quickly after that. I'd stockpiled enough proof to settle any custody dispute. I had photographic evidence, audio recordings, text logs, even video of Megan explicitly cheating. And I had the DNA results that said Liam was mine. If Megan thought she could waltz out of here with my son to leech me dry forever, she was wrong. But I wanted a confrontation that would make them all realize exactly how thoroughly they had lost. One day after the new investigators' final delivery of evidence, Megan and Bernice came to me with faux concern in their voices. Megan's eyes were red, as if she'd been crying. She said, "We need to talk about money. The bills are piling up, and you're not stepping up the way you used to." Bernice folded her arms. "If you love Megan and you love Skylar, and you love your new baby, you need to stop being so selfish. We're a family. That means you provide, and we make sure the household is balanced." I gave them a pointed smile, playing the part of the villain, that cold residue of anger fueling my voice. "You're right," I said. "I do love my son. That's why I'm paying for everything. For now." Skylar stood in the hallway, peering from behind the doorframe. I caught her roll her eyes. "He's such an ATM," she muttered under her breath. Then she smirked. "But you're good for my college fund, right?" I turned on her. "Oh, definitely. I can't wait to foot that bill." She couldn't detect my sarcasm. She just scowled, like I existed solely to open my wallet. Bernice's face softened in that manipulative way she had. "We're all tired. Why don't we talk about this properly tomorrow, dear?" "That's an excellent idea," I said. "Tomorrow works for me." What I didn't share was that I already had the date set with a lawyer and that I planned to be out of the house within 2 days. I'd found a small, cheap apartment where I'd start my new life with Liam. In my quiet moments, I hated myself for not caring about what happened to Skylar, but she'd made her stance clear. The final blow came on a cloudy afternoon. Megan must have sensed something was up because she tried to be unusually pleasant, cooking dinner, though I suspected Skylar might spit in my plate if I turned my back. That evening, I received an urgent text from the lawyer's office. The custody papers were finalized, and I just needed to come sign. Perfect timing. I pretended to head to the hardware store, telling Megan I had to buy a few more things for the nursery. She gave a half-hearted wave. While out, I met with the lawyer in his quiet office. He showed me the final draft that demanded immediate paternity acknowledgement, spelled out my custody claims, and included all the evidence I'd gathered. Megan would be forced to face the fact that I wasn't going to be her doormat. Later that same night, I called the PI to tie up any loose ends. Torres said, "You've got what you need. Good luck." I nodded to myself and whispered, "Thank you." It was time to set off the grenade. The next morning, I left the house as Megan, her mother, and Skylar were preparing for a family outing. They wanted me to stay and watch Liam, so I couldn't vanish with him while they were out. I said I had some errands to run, but that I'd be right back. In reality, I took Liam with me, claiming I needed to visit the pediatrician. In the trunk of the car, I'd already stashed the first wave of diaper bags and baby supplies. If they realized I was leaving, they didn't show it. Bernice's only remark was, "Don't be long," in a snappish tone. I drove downtown, had a final meeting with my lawyer, and left with the glorious stack of documents that proved everything. Then I headed to the new apartment. My plan was, once I got Liam settled, I'd text Megan a single clip from the PI's footage, the one that showed her in the parking lot with her lover. Let that sink in. Then I'd turn off my phone for a day. Let them panic. Sure enough, as soon as I sent the clip, the phone buzzed with repeated calls. I let it ring. I took Liam out of his car seat, set him gently in the portable crib, and tried to calm myself. My heart pounded. I was free, or at least on the path to freedom. I powered off the phone, turned on some background music to drown out the echoing quiet, and fed Liam a bottle. He blinked at me, Innocent, safe, all mine. I didn't turn my phone back on until the next day. There were over 100 missed calls, mostly from Megan. Text messages from Bernice threatened me, calling me a kidnapper. A few scattered texts from unknown numbers, probably her friends, telling me to man up. The rest were from Megan, cycling through fury, confusion, pleas, and bizarrely enough, claims that she'd do anything to fix this. Not a single mention of her affair or the possibility that I might have discovered it. Denial is a powerful drug. What happened next was fairly predictable. Megan and Bernice arrived at my apartment by mid-afternoon. They must have tracked me by the car or some other means. The buzzer rang, and I considered not answering, but I was itching for a confrontation, so I opened the door slightly, just enough to see Megan's puffy, red-rimmed eyes and Bernice's stony face. Behind them was Skylar, arms folded, glare locked on me like I was a piece of trash. Megan's voice quivered. "Please, let us in. We just want to talk." I glanced at Liam, who was napping in a bassinet near the couch, then let them step inside. I stayed in front of them, arms crossed, carefully distant from the baby. Bernice started in first. "We've been worried sick. You can't just disappear with Liam. That's not how this works." I gave her a cold stare. "Actually, I spoke to a lawyer. That's exactly how it works when the mother is cheating and planning to use me just for money, and especially when we have proof of that cheating, plus admissions of how you think I'm basically an ATM. Megan's face crumpled. "I never meant those things. Please, you have to believe me. Everything I said, I was just emotional. And the parking lot, that was a mistake. You have no idea the pressure I've been under. None of that changes the fact I love you, and I love our baby." "Sure," I said, not budging. "You love me so much you told your mother you'd get custody once I broke. And you love me so much you had no trouble stepping out of the marriage, lying about working late, ordering baby items to stash at Bernice's house, and meeting some guy for cheap act in public. Meanwhile, your daughter here," I nodded at Skylar, "was complicit." Skylar rolled her eyes. "Can we just skip the drama? I don't give a crap. I'm not a toddler. I know what's going on. You pay for stuff and we live our lives. That's how it's always been." My nostrils flared. "Say that again," I said softly. She glared. "You heard me. You're a walking paycheck. Get over it." Megan turned to her, eyes wide with anger or shame. Maybe both. "Skylar, shut up." Then she turned back to me, batting tears from her eyes. "She's just upset. She's a kid. Don't hold that against her." I shrugged. "Too late." Skylar snorted. "Whatever, Dad. Or stepdad. Or whoever you are. At least you'll pay for my college before you run off." I let out a bitter laugh. "Is that all you think I'm good for?" Skylar lifted her chin. "Seriously, you think you can just ditch me? Fine. I don't need your presence, just your money. If that means sucking up to you or hooking Mom up with you, so be it." Megan began to sob. "Stop it," she hissed at her daughter. "He's about to leave us and you're not helping." Bernice tried to intervene, stepping closer, voice trembling with a forced calm. "Look, let's settle this sensibly. We can come to an arrangement. Your name is on the mortgage, correct? You wouldn't abandon us. That would be financial suicide. Maybe we can act like adults." I smirked. "That's rich, coming from someone who helped hatch a plan to keep me around as a wallet. Don't you realize I have all the recordings? The big question is, why would I pay for anything else when you all told me, in your own words, that you never loved me?" Megan sank to her knees, tears streaming. "I was an idiot, okay? I was so scared about money and about losing my freedom after having another baby. I needed reassurance, and yes, I did cheat. It was just once, maybe twice, but it never meant anything. You're the father of my child. We can get past this. You never loved me," I reminded her. "Even if you say it now, do you really think I believe you?" "But you love Liam," she pleaded. "He needs me. He needs you too. He needs both parents. We can still fix this." My fury peaked. "Did you ever consider that before you went behind my back, having closeness in parking lots and bragged about how I'm worthless except for a paycheck?" Megan couldn't respond. She just wept. Bernice hovered behind her, jaw set. "You need to let us see the baby," Bernice hissed. "You're taking advantage of the fact that Megan just gave birth. She's vulnerable and you're using it against her." "You have no idea how vulnerable I've felt these past months, hearing you all degrade me." I pointed toward the door. "We're done. My lawyer will be in contact with you because, in case you missed it, I did a test. Liam is my son, so you'll be hearing from me about custody. We'll set up times for you to see him if the court allows it." Megan looked desperate, leaning in. "You can't take him away from me." "Watch me," I said, grabbing the handle of the door. Now get out! Bernice's head snapped up. No, we won't leave without him. Skylar, furious, turned on me. You're such a scumbag. You're worthless. Mom never loved you because you're unlovable. Shut your mouth, I roared, the villain creeping into my voice. You think you can talk to me like that and still expect me to pay for college? She jutted her chin. You will, because that's what you do. You pay or you're a deadbeat. You think you can live with yourself if you don't? I'll tell the whole world you abandoned me. I laughed darkly. Do what you want. I'm finished letting any of you string me along. And with that, I ushered them all out into the hallway. The baby was safe in my arms, oblivious. Megan tried to cling to the doorframe, but I pushed the door shut, flipping the deadbolt. Then I heard the muffled cries of anger from the other side. I locked it all. My heart pounded so hard it felt like it might burst. That's when something banged on the door. Open up! Megan screamed. Skylar's voice was shriller. I hate you! I didn't respond. Exhaustion crushed me. Scenes flashed through my head. Megan hooking up with her lover, Bernice sneering, Skylar spitting in my food or calling me vile names. Then I heard footsteps stomp away. For a brief second, I let myself hope they were done. Suddenly, a sharp crash came from outside. I rushed to the window to see Skylar in a frenzy. She'd picked up a heavy rock from the landscaping and was smashing it against a parked car's windshield. My car. She shrieked like a banshee, cursing me at the top of her lungs. Glass shattered. Bernice tried to pull her away, but Skylar was in a meltdown, screaming expletives. Finally, Megan managed to yank her arm. Skylar, enough! Stop! I heard Megan's voice ring out, high and hysterical. But the damage was done. The windshield had a gaping spiderweb of cracks. Skylar hurled the rock aside, then sprinted away down the street. Megan and Bernice ran after her, tears streaming, voices echoing in the late afternoon air. I stared down at my baby boy. He didn't cry, didn't fuss, just squirmed against me, eyes wide. It's okay, I whispered, though my heart hammered in my chest. We're okay now. That's how it ended that day. My final, brutal confrontation. Police were called by a neighbor who heard the commotion. By the time they arrived, Megan, Bernice, and Skylar were gone. A couple of nosy onlookers came out, wanting to know what had happened. I gave them minimal details, not wanting to broadcast my personal life to the entire complex. In the days that followed, Megan tried calling, texting, emailing. Bernice sent me lengthy messages, sometimes raging, sometimes begging. Skylar never contacted me directly. Maybe she was too proud or too ashamed. All I knew was that they had retreated to Bernice's place for the moment. My lawyer filed the official documents for divorce and custody. Megan's lawyer tried to throw mud my way, claiming I was emotionally abusive and kidnapped Liam. But the evidence was on my side, and the court swiftly recognized that I was the rightful father, that I had reasons to fear for my safety and for the baby's well-being. A few months afterward, a paternity test, court requested this time, once again confirmed I was Liam's biological father. That hammered the final nail into Megan's manipulative designs. Without me funding her home, she couldn't keep up with mortgage payments. She had to concede a great deal in the custody arrangement. Overall, the settlement gave me primary custody, with Megan receiving only supervised visitation at first, courtesy of the video evidence that she was engaging in extremely neglectful behavior, especially that time she'd taken Liam with her to that parking lot. Skylar started texting me, bizarrely enough, about her college prospects, demanding I step up. I ignored her. Admittedly, it stung. This was a kid I had once loved and treated as my own, but her entitlement and cruelty were too blatant. The vow I made to myself was that I would protect Liam, not bankroll the lifestyle of people who had no respect for me. Not long after, I heard a rumor from a distant relative of Megan's that Skylar had run away for a couple days. She cooled her heels in some friend's basement, apparently in protest of how unfair life was. Meanwhile, Bernice tried to orchestrate a family therapy session to repair the bonds. I nearly laughed at the suggestion. I told them all to stay out of my life unless it strictly involved scheduling a visitation for Liam. I guess in a way, I became their demon, the villain they always claimed I was. But it's not like I set out to be cruel. I just refused to play the role of the clueless, bottomless wallet any longer. If they saw that as villainy, so be it. Maybe part of me even enjoyed the feeling of shutting them out, after all the humiliation they doled out to me. Now, months after the meltdown, I'm adjusting to life as a single father. Liam is blissfully unaware of the drama that preluded his arrival in this world. He's babbling now, big eyes darting around my tiny apartment with curiosity. The place is modest. Walls are scuffed. The carpeting is old. But it's my home and his, and there's peace here. I feed him, change him, rock him to sleep. Sometimes I watch him drift off and think about everything that's happened. Megan's betrayal, Bernice's manipulations, Skylar's cruelty. It's like a fever dream, except it's horrifically real. 3 days ago, I had a final piece of closure. Skylar turned up alone at my doorstep. She must have taken a bus or walked the miles across town. I doubt Bernice or Megan was with her because none of them texted me to warn me she was coming. I opened the apartment door and there she was, tears streaking her face, hands trembling. "What do you want?" I asked, voice cold. Her eyes rose to meet mine. She bit her lip. "I need your help," she whispered. "Mom can't afford anything anymore, and I need college money. You promised you'd pay, right?" I stared at her for a long time, remembering her smash my windshield, remembering that security footage of her literally spitting in my coffee, the sneers, the hateful words. Part of me wanted to slam the door in her face right there. Another part remembered that child I once carried on my shoulders. For a moment, I hesitated. She must have seen it because she moved a step closer, tears starting to flow more freely. "Please," she said, "I know I'm a jerk sometimes, but you practically raised me. You said you'd always be there for me." Despite my anger, I had the ghost of a memory of her, age 8, showing me a picture she drew of our family. She used to call me Dad. Then I replayed her meltdown, the repeated line about how I was worthless but should pay for her future. I steeled myself. "I'm sorry," I said. "I'm not paying for a single thing for you. You made your choice clear." I started to shut the door. She panicked, stepping forward, tears dripping off her chin. "No, wait, please," she begged. "I'm so sorry. I take it back, Dad. I was messed up. I didn't mean it. Mom told me things." I cringed at her calling me Dad, and I saw in her eyes a swirl of desperation. But I hardened my resolve. "Don't call me that," I said. "I'm not your father anymore. You need something. Go to the people you love so much you bragged about spitting in my food." She collapsed to her knees. For a second, I just stood there, grappling with the tempest of conflicting emotions. But in the end, I did exactly what my anger told me to do. I slammed the door in her face. I heard her sob once, probably banging a fist on the door. Then, a second later, the sob turned into a shriek of raw fury. I looked through the peephole to see her scramble away from the door. She stormed down the front steps, rummaging around. She snatched up a loose piece of concrete, some broken chunk of the curb or a rock, and flung it at the nearest car. Not mine, but it crashed into the windshield, leaving a huge crack. Another spree of curses spat from her mouth, tears glistening. Then she ran, sprinting down the street like a terrified animal. My neighbors would handle the aftermath. The old me would chase after her, worried sick. But that part of me died the day I realized what she and Megan truly thought of me. Now, there was only this grim resolve to protect Liam and move on. I took a deep breath, pressed my back against the closed door, and tried not to shake from the aftershock of emotions. Eventually, Liam stirred, probably awakened by the noise. I scooped him up from his crib, murmuring comforting nonsense until he relaxed against my shoulder. I kissed his soft hair. He smelled faintly of baby shampoo and innocence, and I felt tears burning my eyes. This, I thought, is my second chance. He's my reason to keep going.